The white zone is for loading and unloading only.
Here, Frank Zappa, on vinyl, just like you asked. Now, can we talk about him? Sure.
There's no denying Frank Zappa was one of a kind, combining music with his unique brand of humor, often putting in weird phrases and little in-jokes in his songs. Now, me personally, I didn't actually start listening to his music until about 2019. The most I knew about him is what he looked like, and also he played the Pope in that one episode of Ren and Stimpy. Frank was very much the iconoclast, going after religion, politicians, the media, these moral crusaders who tried to censor lyrics, and even political correctness. Some of his philosophy has become more well-known on social media than his music has.
Yeah, I take a very cynical point of view. I think that being cynical is a positive value. I think that nobody should trust anybody else. I think that all people are assholes until proven different. And I think that if you take that point of view, you will be disappointed less in life.
And it's worth noting many of these songs we're talking about here cover very racy subjects with some very dark humor.
Well, and it's not just his comedy. There were already plenty of artists that relied on gimmicks, famously. Yeah. But what separated Frank Zappa was his musicality and how he incorporated these finely crafted songs and even really pushed the musical boundaries past the status quo.
Yeah, there are plenty of classic Zappa songs where his guitar playing is front and center, and it's as innovative as many of his famous Guitar Hero peers.
So let's not waste any more time. We're gonna highlight the best of Frank Zappa by formatting this like a vinyl record. No more than 26 minutes aside with 6 bonus tracks at the end.
Yeah, and considering some of Frank's songs are pretty long, we're really going to have to rely on the bonus tracks to fit in some classics.
Exactly. Do you know who you are? You are what you is. You is what you am, and what you am is a Frank Zappa playlist.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Now, I gotta be honest, putting this list together was not easy.
Yeah. In a word, Frank Zappa's catalog is massive.
Ow!
Oh, jeez, I'm so sorry.
Watch where you're throwing your words!
I'll be more careful next time, I swear.
That was my window.
I can fix that.
You got 5 seconds.
Okay.
So Frank Zappa started out with the Mothers of Invention.
Ow.
Yeah, it's always best to start at the beginning, but even though these first records are attributed to the Mothers of Invention, you might as well call them Frank Zappa records. He wrote pretty much all of the songs, arranged everything, played lead guitar, and often sang, even if he personally never considered himself a lead singer.
But you also have singer Ray Collins, bassist Ray Estrada, drummer Jimmy Carl Black, he's the Indian of the group.
By the way, full disclosure, some of Zappa's humor is not very PC.
Oh no, we'll get to it. But in 1966, they released their landmark debut record, Freak Out. And this was a double album. Double albums were not common at this time, let alone a band's debut record. Talk about an ambitious first album.
Yeah, why didn't I bring up Freak Out during our 60s episode?
Well, because you were too stoned.
Okay, alright everybody, I want you to do the I'm so stoned right now, I don't even know where I am dance. No, I don't remember any of that.
Well, if you remembered the 60s, you weren't there. And I can't think of a better tune to kick off the playlist than the first song, Hungry Freak's Daddy. Written by Frank Zappa, Hungry Freak's Daddy may appear to be a product of its time, right down to that Rolling Stone-style guitar riff, or the tambourine being louder than the drums in the actual mix.
Yeah, what is the deal with that in 60s songs?
They just really liked them some tambourine back then. But the minute Frank's voice comes in, with Ray singing a higher vocal part, the Mothers' distinctive sound is established. Almost sounding like Frank and Ray are purposely singing off key, making fun of the song. This wasn't necessarily anything new, as I said in the 60s doc, even Ray Davies of the Kinks could sing in a proto-punk manner. Frank just has a voice of his own, and despite the fact that he never considered himself much of a vocalist, I tend to prefer songs that he sings.
I wholeheartedly agree. His voice would sometimes go high, it would sometimes go low, it would sometimes have this weird filter over it. He was pretty much a living cartoon character when it came to his songs.
And Hungry Freak's daddy gives us our very first Zappa guitar solo.
Already establishing himself as a guitar hero to keep your eye on, but we'll have a lot more to say about his playing in the coming songs.
And again, in terms of composing, these are some pretty unconventional chord changes for mid-60s rock and roll. You're already hearing Frank's love of jazz and classical with the addition of vibes, but he's still throwing in some kazoos for good measure.
And lyrically, they come right out of the gate swinging against the establishment, proclaiming that Mr. America can no longer deny these hungry freaks speaking their mind, despite the best efforts of the school indoctrination system.
A lot of what we do is designed to annoy people to the point where they might, just for a second, question enough of their environment to do something about it.
There's other counterculture staples here, like Who Are the Brain Police, and one more that we'll save for the bonus tracks.
But for now, let's go on to his next album, Absolutely Free.
Absolutely.
Free.
Which also welcomed keyboardist Don Preston and Bunk Gardner on a saxophone.
Probably the best known song on the album is Brown Shoes Don't Make It. And well, all I can say about that song is, buckle up, buckaroos.
Now it starts off conventional enough, you got a bluesy riff and some of those signature Mother's vocals, but it goes off the rails very quickly.
Yeah, you want to talk about avant-garde, this is a prime example of that. This was the song that proved Frank was operating on a whole other level as a composer.
I was writing chamber music and writing orchestral music. I started writing that when I was 14. I didn't write a rock and roll song until I was in my 20s.
He mentioned having studied Stravinsky, and you can really hear that with these atonal melodies and lush orchestration during certain sections, conducted by Frank himself. You know how musically adventurous Good Vibrations was with different musical sections? Well, this is 7 minutes of that. Every time you think you have a grasp on the structure of one section, he goes into another one, surprising you all the way. And in a similar vein to something like Rite of Spring, the music conveys this very sinister, very uncomfortable feeling.
Well, then the music is right at home with the lyrics, which are very sinister and uncomfortable. Just to give an example, she's only 13 and she knows how to nasty. That's the correct reaction to have, yes.
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 So the song centers around a politician. Apparently Frank was inspired to come up with the title when the press questioned LBJ's choice to wear brown shoes with a gray suit before flying to meet troops in Vietnam. Like, you remember how everyone freaked out when Obama wore a tan suit? It's kind of like that. But this goes way darker, with the politician having a perverted sexual fantasy about taking a 13-year-old girl to bed while his real-life wife begs him to go to an orchid show.
Yeah, and this is no "she was just 17, you know what I mean" innuendo. These lyrics get very graphic. Told you they weren't very PC. And you can bet the record company objected to the inclusion of this song, with lyrics like "I'd like to make her do a nasty on the White House lawn," which held up the album's release.
But much like how George Carlin deliberately crossed the line when it came to comedy, so did Frank Zappa when it came to his music. He wasn't afraid to call out people in higher power in a satirical way, but it also was something that would make you squirm in your seat a little bit.
Someone on Reddit wrote, "Brown Shoes Don't Make It" is honestly just Zappa's fucked up Bohemian Rhapsody, and yeah, I'd say that hits the nail right on the head.
Well, the next track isn't as graphic, but it's no less satirical. The Mother's third album is called "We're Only In It For The Money," and right off the bat, what does this album cover remind you of?
The Simpsons Yellow Album?
Well, yeah, but I'm talking... never mind. So, in all seriousness, when we were working on the History of Rock 60s video, I did actually plan on mentioning this album as Frank's answer to the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album. We're Only in It for the Money is a sharply satirical album focused specifically on the commercialization of the hippie movement, which Frank viewed Sgt. Pepper as. This is one of those albums that's hard to break apart since the songs segue into each other, but we'll include a couple, like Who Needs the Peace Corps? A very scathing attack on phony hippies who seem to only be in it for the trends and drugs.
The generation that's using the drugs now, I would say, is you can just forget it.
Written during a run of shows at the Fillmore in San Francisco during the Summer of Love. Production-wise, this one feels a little flatter than the earlier tracks, but still unique as a composition. Gotta love Bunk Gardner's spirited sax playing here.
But obviously the standout is Frank's vocals, which are just so cynical.
At the end of the song, while Bunk is playing away, Frank acts out as this phony hippie, and this is when it gets really funny. I will love everyone. I will love the police as they kick the shit out of me on the street. Again, it kind of pains me that I can't keep the entire album going, but just to include another classic, let's go with...
What's the ugliest part of your body?
Attributed to Frank's love of doo-wop, this song is just so catchy and another staple of the counterculture, attributing ugliness to the mind more than anything. But honestly, my favorite part is the jarring transition to all your children are poor, unfortunate victims of systems beyond their control.
And again, relevant to today, because we are all victims of a system beyond our control.
That's true. Like, I can't control getting you out of my apartment.
They're there. They're there.
Now, the original lineup for the Mothers disbanded in 1969, so Frank released a solo album on his own, his second, actually, called Hot Rats.
Most of the songs on here are just one long jam session. Some of them don't even have lyrics. And my favorite is the very first track, Peaches and Regalia.
The instrumentation just blends together in such a quirky way, but it's nonetheless memorable. Ian Underwood handles the many layers of keyboards and woodwinds, and it really all came together in the studio.
The revolutionary thing about that album was the quantity and texture of the overdubbing that was being done on it. 16-track recording was a brand new medium.
It's funky, it's jazzy, it's wonderfully silly at times. It's the peaches and cream of the entire album.
So, a little side note before we continue on our discussion. I did an audio play a few years back called Remember the Dream Girl. Links are down below. And I asked JT to actually help with the score. And I told him I wanted a cue for a mad scientist character, and it had to be similar to Peaches and Regalia.
Yeah, I do remember that, although, full disclosure, I kind of ended up turning the song into a Jeff Beck song because, well, I turned everything into a Jeff Beck song. But exploring the musical arrangement of Peaches and Regalia was a lot of fun. There's almost no musical section that repeats for over 2 minutes. But unlike Brown Shoes Don't Make It, it's always grooving. Again, it really shows off the brilliance of his musical arranging, and he would perform it live often, including a famous rendition at the Fillmore in 1971.
And, as long as we're highlighting his instrumental material, let's include another favorite of mine from an album attributed to the Mothers.
Though from this point on, a Mother's album and a solo Zappa album are almost interchangeable.
The album is called The Grand Wazoo, and the song is Cletus Auritus Auritus.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of weird titles.
Frank had taken a year off after being assaulted and badly injured, so the album was definitely a good creative outlet for him. And given the high energy with those quirky horn players, you'd never know he was recovering. This was also Frank's first time working with longtime collaborator, keyboardist George Duke, who plays some amazing piano on this track, including that bluesy solo. Again, with unique instrumentation and very few lyrics except for la 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 la. This is another musical departure for Frank.
We're into the mid-70s, and for me, this is peak Zappa.
Yes, me too.
Overnight Sensation is a real funky album. We got George Duke again, along with Tom Fowler on bass, Ralph Humphrey on drums, and percussionist extraordinaire Ruth Underwood on vibes and marimbas. I can include a lot of songs from this album, including fan favorite Montana, but believe me, we thought long and hard over whether to include that song or not. But I'm the Slime is a must. That funk clav riff is irresistible, especially when it's joined by those horns. And then comes that deranged vocal of his.
I have resisted for years, but very little has changed.
Targeting television's mind control over society. Again, talk about something existing for years, but very little has changed.
Well, he is the best you can get. Have you guessed him yet? He's the slime oozing out from your TV set.
That's right, folks! Don't touch that dial!
Those harmony vocals are performed by Tina Turner and the Ikeettes, who sang several songs in the album. Ike Turner told Frank to pay them the same rate he did per song, but Frank paid them by the hour, so they each got more. When Ike heard the album, he thought it was shit and demanded Tina and the girls not be credited. By the way, can we just both agree that Ike was a total piece of shit?
Oh, man, yeah, absolutely.
Free. So that's side one. And for side two, well, what better record to start off with than the follow-up, Apostrophe, recorded around the same time. And this may actually be my favorite Frank Zappa album.
Really? It's my favorite too.
All right.
Woo!
I still hate you.
Yeah, I know. Feelings mutual.
And not just us, Apostrophe shot Frank into the top 10, and the album can definitely be seen as a progressive rock album, especially the first side, where most of the songs segue into each other like a full story.
And it starts off with one of Frank's most famous songs.
Watch out where the Huskies go, and don't you eat that yellow snow. In classic prog fashion, it starts with the sound of wind placing us in the Arctic before that memorable bass line comes in 7/8 time no less. And Ralph Humphrey's drums have these bursts of dynamic energy. Once again, the vocals have that doo-wop feeling to them with those low bass vocals.
In the story of the song, Frank dreams he's an Eskimo named Nanook.
Now, public service announcement, the term Eskimo is considered offensive in some Inuit cultures, but this is Frank Zappa we're talking about. Being offensive was kind of his thing.
And Nanook's mother gives him the best advice she can.
A piece of wisdom that has been passed down from generation upon generation, and so on and so forth. Would you like to know what that wisdom is, good sir?
I would like to know what that wisdom is, good sir.
Okay, I'm about to tell you. It is, do not eat snow that has been piddled on by your local wildlife.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. See, I always thought that the advice was, don't eat the lemon-flavored snow cone, like the one that I just had for lunch.
Dude, that wasn't lemon-flavored.
I see. I'm gonna go throw up now.
And right about that time, people.
We go right into the song Nanook Rubs It.
It's a direct continuation from the previous song, so it's imperative that you listen to both of them together.
Nanook encounters a fur trader,
Who is strictly from commercial.
whipping on his favorite baby seal.
Wham! It's the epic struggle between consumer and the business world, and how you should totally 100% fight late-stage capitalism by sticking a pea-flavored snow cone into someone's eye. Wham! Only to be counterattacked by a dog-do snow cone into your other eye. Wham! Great googly moogly! Oh, jeez.
Quick! Call me an ambulance!
Okay. You're an ambulance.
And all the time there are these kick-ass guitar riffs, backup vocals, horns. There's even a nod to Frank's song from the Fillmore album called Mudshark. Even the narration style of the song is very similar, but it is absolutely perfected on this track.
It may seem sacrilegious not to include St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast or Father Oblivion, considering they're all part of this big suite, but, well, we can't include the entire album.
Yeah, seriously. Give this album a listen front to back.
Yeah, but there is one more song that we do need to include from Apostrophe, Uncle Remus. This is a different kind of song for Frank, less tongue-in-cheek, and a much more straightforward commentary on the civil rights movement, police turning the hose on them, and is it moving too slow? Uncle Remus refers to the literary character, also seen in that Disney film that they want you to forget ever existed. The main theme seems to question gradualism, not to just keep your nose to the grindstone like Uncle Remus, but to take action, knocking these jockeys off rich people's lawns. The music was written by George Duke, who plays this incredible gospel piano at the beginning of the song. He would actually record his own version, which is beautiful in its own right. But this is the Zappa song that I react to in a very emotional way, aided by those fantastic backups by Tina and the Ikettes, and another incredible guitar solo by Frank. Even Frank's vocal has so much soul to it, even if there's still that hint of irony in it. It really shows that he could have been a straight-up R&B artist.
But you know what? I think it's about time for Frank to do what he does best. Shut up and play your guitar.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of songs that focus on Frank's guitar playing. Honestly, we could probably fill an entire playlist of just those songs.
But to save on time, we're going to just include his staple, Black Napkins.
First heard on the 1976 album Zoot Allures, Black Napkins is definitely mellower and simpler than some of the others we've highlighted, giving Frank space to stretch out, but his playing is no less intense. This original track was actually recorded live in Osaka, and it became a live staple for him.
I mean, you're the guitar player. What's your analysis?
Well, much like Jeff Beck or John McLaughlin, you can definitely hear a fusion jazz element in his guitar playing. But he's not afraid to retain some of that rock and roll sloppiness that gives his playing some character.
My theory is this: I have a basic mechanical knowledge of the operation of the instrument, and I got an imagination. And when the time comes up in the song to play a solo, it's me against the laws of nature.
It's hard to pin down his playing. It is very unconventional, but also very fluid and very melodic. Black Napkins is a great showcase of his talents as a guitar player. The only problem with the song is that it ends. But now's a good time to move on to another classic album of his, a triple album no less, 1979's Joe's Garage.
Whoa, is that blackface, dude?
This is my second favorite album of his.
Yeah, believe it or not, it's a rock opera. It actually came out the same year as The Wall. The basic story revolves around Joe, an aspiring musician who experiences promiscuous sex encounters, drug abuse, jail time, and an eventual ban on music by the Central Scrutinizer, played by Frank in an affected voice. So I'm not gonna lie, we heavily debated what song to include from this album.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones, like Catholic Girls and also Why Does It Hurt When I Pee?
Classic.
No, I'm asking you seriously, why does it hurt when I pee?
Honestly, I wanted to include Keep It Greasy, not just because of the suggestive lyrics, but because of that incredible jam at the end with Vinny Cayuta on drums in 1916 time, no less. Seriously, check this track out.
However, it is 8 minutes long and it would take up a good portion of the playlist. So to keep things simple, we just decided to include the title track.
It's a fairly straightforward story song, sung by Ike Willis and harmonized by Frank for most of the song, about Joe starting a band in his garage where they play simple 3-chord songs. And sure enough, the song itself is the same 3 chords over and over again.
And that's when his mama screams, "Turn it down!"
And the neighbors call the police, Joe's first confrontation with the law. They go easy on him, give him a donut, and tell him to stick to church-oriented social activities like Catholic girls.
And already you can hear Frank's disillusionment with the industry, which would really come to a head in the 80s when he went off against the PMRC, which we already talked about in our, 80s video.
The PMRC proposal is an ill-conceived piece of nonsense.
But there is still some nostalgia to be had, with Frank referencing his own musical beginnings with the Mothers. I love when they mention playing the tune on the saxophone and proceed to feature these atonal horn parts. Classic Zappa. We'll close the main playlist out with the final song from 1975's Bongo Fury, a collaboration with Captain Beefheart, and that song is The Muffin Man.
The Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man. Now, the song is partially a studio recording, but mostly a live track performed in Austin, Texas.
And the song follows the Muffin Man, seated at the table in the laboratory of the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen. I just gotta say, I love it when Frank clearly flubs a line and they just kept going. And that's in the final product, too.
I know, it totally makes the song.
Definitely.
And once they cut to the band, it just rocks so hard.
Girl, you thought it was a man, but it was a muffin.
You know, sometimes you write songs about civil rights or government propaganda. Other times you write about a man who is in fact a muffin. And once again, Frank's solo is face-melting. Ending on him introducing the band is also a nice touch to end this side of the playlist.
Well, now it's time for 6 bonus tracks, though honestly, I consider it more an extension of the main playlist, since these are Son of His Best, Son of His Best.
Son of his best?
Son of His Best.
Son of his
it's
best.
the Son of His Best.
Son of his best.
I think it's worth including another song from Freak Out, and Trouble Every Day is that other social commentary statement I mentioned before. Maybe Frank's most conventional song in many ways, being more of a blues vibe, but nonetheless memorable. That's Ray Collins playing harmonica, along with Elliot Ingber joining Frank on guitar. Frank wrote the song watching the Watts riots on TV. The Watts riots occurred in Los Angeles in August of '65, incited by police brutality of black people. Amazing how little things have changed. So it's definitely one of Frank's more serious songs, like Uncle Remus. There's a lot of commentary on racism, the sensationalist way the media covered the event, but really the line that stands out to me is, hey, you know something, people? I'm not black, but there's a whole lots of times I wish I could say I'm not white. That's really heavy and shows how even this early in his career, Frank wrote songs that made you think.
On the lighter side, we'll return to Hot Rats with another staple called Willie the Pimp. The riff is played on violin by Sugarcane Harris, while Captain Beefheart takes the mic, the only song on the album to include vocals. This is also where the album title comes from. The percussion on it almost reminds me of an empty revolver being spun around. But what this song is best known for is the guitar solo, which has become such a staple for Frank, playing it live many times, notably on the Fillmore album. Frank kicks in a wah-wah pedal and just goes to town for a full 9 minutes.
So, we debated whether or not to include Inco Roads from 1975's One Size Fits All. I'll be honest with y'all, despite people citing it as their favorite Zappa song, it didn't really hit me right away. Until I heard the live version.
Oh, definitely. I was definitely feeling this more than the album version.
It's almost like a weather report song with Earth, Wind & Fire style vocals, sung by George Duke, who plays a killer keyboard solo. Ruth Underwood leads the charge on marimbas, and it's really one of her great showcases. We also got Napoleon Murphy Brock on sax and flute, Tom Fowler on bass, Chester Thompson on drums, and of course Frank on guitar, who plays another one of his trademark solos. Man, what a band! Honestly, I was so blown away by the complexity of the instrumental performance, I didn't even think to dissect the lyrics until the last minute writing this copy. It mostly focuses on the mythology of aliens visiting the ancient Inca civilization, hence the spaceship sound effects in the beginning. But of course this is Zappa we're talking about, so there's plenty of silliness, like a booger bear and a guacamole queen, but the sheer musicality of this piece still makes it sound so majestic, even as the singers perform that trademark mother's vocal weaving. The version we're showing here comes from a 1974 concert film called A Token of His Extreme, which is the version we'll include in the playlist. I'm almost ashamed to say we came this close to not including Inca Roads in this playlist at all, but I'm really glad that we did, because honestly, by this point, this may be one of my favorite Zappa compositions, and it really shows what a master composer he was.
But now, let's move into the 80s to highlight some of Frank's later material.
You Are What You Is from the 1981 album of the same name. It has the most quotable lyrics about being yourself, and it's done in the most Frank Zappa way possible. It's got a reggae beat because, well, it's 1981 and everything had to sound like it was a reggae song. And Frank harmonizes with Ike Willis, who belts out the song's ending. This was one of the few music videos Frank made, and of course it was met with controversy for showing Ronnie Reagan being sent to the electric chair. But one song that did get a lot of attention was Valley Girl, which Frank did with his daughter Moon Unit Zappa. Yes, that is her real name. The track itself features a heavy bass by Scott Thunes and is totally mocking the 80s Valley Girl dialect.
I wrote this song about the values of the people in the San Fernando Valley. But it turned out to be cute, and so everybody thinks it's cute. Okay, it's a nice, cute record.
Moon, who was 14 at the time, was actually woken up in the middle of the night by her dad to recreate this Valley Girl impression. And despite his best efforts, the song became Frank's only top 40 hit and popularized the Valley Girl speak. Like totally. But ultimately, it is a sweet collaboration between father and daughter.
We're down to our last bonus track.
Yeah, and honestly, this song should have been included on the main playlist, but it's about 9 minutes long, and we thought it would be better to just be the final one to close it out.
We are, of course, talking about the penultimate song from Joe's Garage, Watermelon in Easter Hay.
That's right.
Let me catch up on the story of this album. Joe is released from jail only to find that music has been banned, and starts imagining guitar notes in his head. The central scrutinizer, once again interrupted as Frank laughs during his performance, says that Joe imagines his last imaginary guitar solo, knowing the end is near.
And what follows is one of Frank's most beautiful solos, played over a 2-chord ballad in 9/4 time. Many fans have cited this as his finest guitar solo, including his son Dweezil. And this is on an album that already includes many of his best solos. For all his cynicism and ironic wit, there's something beautifully melancholic about Frank's guitar playing on this song. It really is his Comfortably Numb or 'Cause We've Ended as Lovers, and I think it ultimately represents Frank Zappa at his most human, his most genuine.
It provides such a dreamlike atmosphere. It's like sitting under the tree and letting the wind blow in your face.
But who gives a fuck anyway?
Remember, you can find a streaming playlist in the description below.
Also, what are your favorite Zappa songs? Let us know in the comments. Also, I just gotta say, Happy Halloween, everybody! Sorry I didn't dress up this time, but, I already did it. I didn't feel like doing it again.
Yeah, I was gonna get a pumpkin. I haven't gotten one yet. Busy,
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I've got a guitar. So why don't we play one of Frank Zappa's songs to close out the playlist?
Yeah!
This is the central scrutinizer. You can no longer play music and must stop this video immediately.
But it's my channel.
Do it now! The subscriber button is for subscribing and unsubscribing only. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button and also join the Patreon page so that JT can have money to buy new kitchen appliances.